Hello and welcome back to Stir. I recently had one of those aha moments where God opened my eyes to a deeper meaning in a passage I'd always taken for granted. Psalm 127 begins, "Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain." I'd always read this as referring to the literal house of Israel, and then by extension, God's church, his people, and his work. If he isn't blessing the efforts, the labor amounts to nothing. Simple enough, right? But then God lifted a veil on my mind. These metaphors apply just as much to my own household as they do to the greater body. We've been talking about returning to prayer and study after a lull, and this psalm speaks directly to that. Though I take my calling seriously, I've often struggled to be a Mary because I'm so naturally a Martha. To ease my conscience, I tell myself, well, God gave me these children knowing that this is a full-time job. Caring for them is serving him, so he'll give me grace on prayer and study. And then off I'd go with a slightly clearer conscience to mop floors and pay bills. But that logic doesn't align with Psalm 127. Unless the Lord builds the house and guards the city, my efforts are ultimately empty. In the scenario I described, I was the one building and watching. God was kind of pushed to the sidelines, like a second string player that I could call in when I got winded instead of the MVP. The psalm continues, "It's in vain that you rise early and go to bed late, eating the bread of anxious toil." That one hit home. Am I burning the candle at both ends only to bear limited spiritual fruit? I often turn to God as plan B when I hit my personal limits, instead of seeking him first and then applying my efforts. And what about that phrase, eating the bread of anxious toil? Well, we reap what we sow. If I sow anxiety and self-reliance, that's the bread I'll eat. How much more satisfying would it be to eat the bread of life, Christ himself, every day? There's a lot in these 5 verses, but I want to highlight one more section. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. If our supposed blessings sometimes feel more like burdens, we need to ask ourselves, is it because I'm not a skilled warrior? Think of a medieval movie scene, or even Mulan, where a skilled man of war tries to train villagers with weapons of war, and it's pretty much chaos. Arrows are flying everywhere, no one's hitting the target. You see, our children are arrows regardless of how skilled we are, but they're really only going to fly straight when they're guided by a skilled warrior. How do we become a skilled warrior? Well, we need to put on the armor of God daily. We've got to get up and dress with intention. You may not be a morning Bible study person, but the principle is the same. We need to spend time in Ephesians 6 with the armor of God, and we need to visualize what that's going to look like for me every day. How is that going to look for you tomorrow in your situation? Are you willing to go to the trouble of putting that armor on daily? Or are you okay just falling back on eating the bread of anxious toil because it's too inconvenient to prepare diligently? Our Christian walk requires intentionality. I hope this reflection on Psalm 127 encourages you to keep God at the center of your busy life. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.